Now, here's Mr. Midnight, Jack Delroy.
Oh, good evening, night owls, and thank you for allowing me into your living rooms once again.
Hey guys, welcome back to Spooky Tuesday, a weekly podcast where we're breaking down all of our favorite slashers, thrillers, monster movies, and black comedies on the new scariest day of the week. I'm Sydney Thompson.
I'm Monica Height.
And I'm Chelsea Duff.
And before we get started, we just want to say thank you so much to all of our spookies out there who bought our spooky swag. I'm very excited to match with all of you. Raise your hand if you bought the camo hat. Okay, good. Yeah, I knew Sydney would too. I'm sure so many of the rest of you did too. We can all match. It's going to be so sexy. But about 2 weeks from now, they'll be done with production and then things will start shipping out to all of you. A little less than 2 weeks. And then as soon as you get all of your stuff, we would love if you would take a picture in your hashtag Spooky Tuesday swag. It's wordy, but that's the name of our podcast. And share it with us so we can share it with everybody because we got to see. Everyone needs to know how sexy our fans are, our listeners are.
That is true.
They need to know. I need to be
know.
reminded. I don't see you guys face to face. This will be our chance. But yeah, we're really excited. I can't wait. I love him. I can't wait for my hat. Honestly, that's what I'm most excited for. But Sydney, what are we doing this week?
Well, get comfy cozy on your couch. Get snuggly wuggly. We are staying up late for Late Night with the Devil.
The kind of thing you're at home, it's the 70s, vibes are crazy, and you're like, what's on TV tonight?
It's
something
Halloween.
Normal, I assume, but what if it's crazy?
Crazy.
I think I really stuck the landing on that
never
one.
seen before happens. Something unprecedented happens. You never know.
And according to IMDb, it's a live television broadcast in 1977 goes horribly wrong, unleashing evil into the nation's living rooms.
Evil, you say?
Evil!
Wow. Well, something evil is certainly happening here, I'll tell you that.
The vibes that we're going for on today's episode are that Sydney and Chelsea are at home watching Late Night with the Devil on their TV sets. And I'm the sleazy producer on set of Night Owl.
That's Leo over there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
We've got our own Leo.
Sydney and I are children about to be scarred.
Yep.
Yeah, your lives are about to change. I will probably die. Not sure. Could go either way. But yeah, I'm so glad we're doing this movie. I'm so glad we're doing it so soon, but I'm also mad about it because all I wanted to do once I finished this movie was watch it again, but it's not out on streaming until the 19th of April. And I'm just like, come on.
Right?
I can't wait.
I can't wait to rewatch this one because so picture it. It is 10:30 p.m. on Easter Sunday.
Ooh, the perfect time.
Like, basically alone at the movie theater because one, I'm in Alabama. Who wants to go see a movie about the devil? And who wants to go see a movie about the devil on Easter?
And they're like filming in New York or something, like
right?
Those coastal elites or whatever. Like, that's not what Alabama's about.
How dare they? But I drug Taylor to go see it with me.
That is the vibe because so that's the difference between LA and Alabama. Everybody the night before, what's it called, Good Friday, was packing in the theater to see Immaculate. I'll tell you that. Everybody was like, "Oh, it's about to be the day that he died. Let's see this very, very sacrilegious movie."
Let's go see a sexy nun.
Yeah. but that's not what we're doing tonight. I loved this movie, but I feel like we kind of knew that was going to happen already, that Monica
You
was
guys
going
were
to
really
love this
pushing for it on
movie.
the schedule. Yeah. And
Oh
there
yeah, it
was
was
some
non-negotiable.
well, there was unfortunately to say some Chelsea pushback initially, just because there was like a lot of demonic devil possession, blah blah blah, happening with our schedule lately. And if I'm to understand it, it very possibly may continue next week as well. And I was trying to be like, what if we whittled it down a little? But like, so far so good. I'm interested. This was
They're
an
also
interesting one.
different
Like,
too.
they are different. They're just the House of the Devil, Late Night with the Devil. I was like, only one devil movie title, you guys. And I got outvoted, so it didn't matter
No.
anyway. But
Aren't you glad that you opened your mind past your preconceived notions about films regarding the devil and his many forms?
and his many forms. I think they can exist together, and I've gotten my way a lot lately, and I'll get my way next week. So
I love when
we
Chelsea
can all be
lets
happy
in the
campers.
listeners on our
This is the
internal
drama that goes on
bickering.
behind the scenes.
Please don't let them know about our internal memos. That's private for the company. Employees only.
But no, I mean, I am glad that we did this one because I went to a writer director Q&A screening actually.
So jealous.
It was very cool. It was a packed theater and it was like a Saturday night. And then I like heard from the writer directors afterwards in like a moderated panel. And then they were really nice guys and they just like stuck around answering people's questions and talking to people and taking pictures for like a long time afterwards too. So I also just hovered nearby waiting to see if they were going to say anything else about the movie and writing it down in my notes app. But it's a good theater experience. So I mean, hopefully some people listening got to have that as well. I think it'll probably make for a good at-home viewing experience too, because again, sort of the premise lends itself to the at-home
Totally.
viewing, but it also like lends itself to like I'm in the studio audience. You know what I mean? So I think that was a cool aspect of it too.
I wish there was
Definitely.
more people in the theater when I saw it because I basically saw it at home.
Yeah.
Well, but
big
you saw
screen
it
at
big.
least.
That's the thing. I don't care about who necessarily is in the theater unless they're bad people in the theater who suck. If they're good people in the theater, then it enhances it. But for me, it's like the sound shaking my seat and seeing Nicole Kidman beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
I almost said Renee Zellweger, and I want to be shot. I want you to come here and kill me. That I almost
We're
said
putting
Renee
Monica down
Zellweger as
immediately.
the AMC lady.
Wow.
What is wrong with me? I'm just thinking about Chicago, unfortunately. That's got to be
Well,
what
he
it is.
references Illinois, and they make some reference to him having been like a Chicago, the main character having
Yeah,
been
Jack.
like a Chicago radio host. So I think probably it's just subliminal messaging.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. Everything I
That's
do
the
is
You're
devil
making
coming through,
unconscious
actually.
connections. It's like
Everything I
actually
do
your
is
brain's working on
planned.
a higher level.
I've actually always, yes, of course. Of course. Thank you so much. That's
You're
true.
welcome.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like I feel a kinship with Stephen King right now in particular because I like had the exact same reaction as him to the movie. I think his quote was like, I couldn't take my eyes off the screen or something. And I honestly felt myself like trying not to blink while I watched this movie. Like my eyes were wide. I was just like gripping the armrest, like mouth agape, eyes wide open for like 90% of it, just because I didn't want to miss a second. Because I mean, look at what I'm wearing right now. This is all stuff that I own and wear all the time. This is my time of history, the 70s. And so just from an aesthetic perspective, I was going fucking crazy. But in and of itself, I feel like we should get this conversation out of the way in the beginning. Part of that was ruined for me because I thought they nailed the concept of the set of the 70s. I thought it looked really good. But then they also fucking ruined it because they did the AI thing.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we should just talk about it right off the bat and get it done so we can dive into the actual movie. But the structure of the film is that it's like you're literally watching a late night talk show. And like back in the day, they used to have little things like, and here's a message from our sponsors. And it was like a little like image, like, when you used to go to the movie
Interstitial.
theater. Yeah, an interstitial message that says, we'll be right back or something like that. And I thought like some of them looked kind of cool, but in reality, I don't know if it was all of them, at least 3 of them, right?
I
Were
would
created
imagine the one
using
that's just
AI.
like this swoopy. I don't know if that was AI designed, but like
The
the Happy
skeleton, right?
Halloween,
Yeah.
the skeleton one, the owl on the TV. I think those were all AI.
Yeah, all of those were AI, which really pisses me off because I know I am very anti-AI. And specifically for stuff like this, like you can find an image or you can have an artist recreate that. And it also pisses me off a lot that it was the owl stuff because I really like owls. And
Yeah,
so that
and one
really
of those
pissed me off
owls,
even more.
the AI gave it like one nipple, just on one side, and every time it came up, we went with Danny, who's been on 2 of our episodes, and every time it came up, I was like,
He was on Rocky
one
Horror.
nipple, don't you see? And he hated that. He didn't like it.
Oh,
by the
yeah,
way,
everybody-
I'm
but
gonna.
What are you talking about? Everybody knows owls only have one nipple.
just one titty
Owls are
nipple.
not
Yeah.
mammals.
Owls
Owls are
only
not
have
mammals.
one nipple. It's a
Owls famously
common
breastfeed.
fact.
Owls famously have no nipples, so this is making me
Owls
angry as
famously
a
have
big
one
owl
nipple.
fan. I'm wearing my spooky 70s.
winking.
I don't know if it's an owl, but weird bird necklace.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
I
it
was
looked
talking.
fucking bad. Like when the one on the TV, that one looked fine. And I think the skeleton might be one too. And the weird skeleton part. Yeah, I looked at that and I was like,
All of the
oh, it does look
commercial
fucked up.
stuff.
I will
is
say
AI.
I get why they thought they could get away with it because they're so briefly seen. And if I hadn't been looking for it, I don't know that I would have noticed. And I don't know how other people noticed in the first place because it's like even looking for it, I felt like I didn't have enough time to really examine the image. But I was talking about it with this guy after I saw it on the Saturday during the Q&A screening because he was like about to go in and I was like coming out. But there was like hubbub obviously with the writer director brother team in the lobby of the AMC. And he was kind of like, yeah, is it such a big deal? Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. And I was like, well, here's the thing about it is that like there is the perspective of like this is replacing people's jobs and that's a valid perspective, but also it's a fucking copyright issue. Like unless you're licensing the images that you're training your AI on to be able to generate something new, you're using those images illegally and you're
it's stealing
plagiarizing other
intellectual
artists.
property. Because
Yeah, and so like
it cannot create art. Like AI cannot create art. It has to be trained, and so it innately takes from things that already exist. That's why it pisses me off so much. And also, if you're trying to create an authentic experience of a 70s period piece here, that's
had
just
no
like
AI
so
in the
fucking
70s.
cheap. And it's so stupid. Yeah, of course. They didn't have like a bunch of stuff that they probably used to make this movie, but it's just like I don't know. It's just like it's so easy to be like, "Hey, person who has a 70s art style, draw an owl." Like it wouldn't even have taken them that long.
I did see Twitter and they were like, "Yeah, you could have paid an artist $12 for."
Well, don't pay an artist $12.
That was like they were like people were like they didn't have a budget. Like so it was so, like the discourse. Like I get where they were coming from, but it was so funny on the internet when they were
not $12.
There might be a public domain fucking owl, okay? Like that might exist out there for you. You know what I mean? And there are free
they had
fonts.
that one that was the New York skyline. You know what I mean? Like they could have done shit like that for all of them, where I'm sure they could have found free to use images on stock websites. Like I use free to use stock images all the time for our episode art. It's not hard.
We love free to use stock images.
It's not fucking hard to do at all. And it's just like I feel really angry.
There's a little bit of a blight on the movie.
No, exactly. That's what it is. This is such a fucking awesome movie. This movie made me so giddy and so excited. This is the exact type of horror that I get so excited about, where they do something like how I felt about The Menu, where they did something like totally like radical idea. You know what I mean? It's not radical idea, but it's like it hasn't been done
They're doing
yet.
something
It's a
new.
creative medium. It's something new. We get so much of the same shit. We get so many vampires. We get so many exorcisms, we get so many of that. And yes, this has some of those elements, but it's giving it to us in a whole new way. So why did they have to fucking fumble the ball when they're in the Sydney? Help me with this football metaphor I'm trying to make. Fumbling the ball right
When they're
before
in the
Five
end zone?
yards from the end zone.
When they're in the end zone.
Yeah, they fumbled it in the final moments. The
It's a
game-winning
shame.
play. It's really sucks. So, I don't know. Well, I didn't notice it at first, but then you were like, "Oh, look at the owl," and I was like, "It looks fucking so dumb. It was so deformed." I don't know. It just frustrates me. Also, I had to see an image, another AI generated image on Twitter today, and it was of a man with a chest piece of two alligators, and the AI
And
gave
the
him big
giant
puffy
nipples.
nipples, and it was really upsetting to look at. And so I hate AI.
It was so funny.
It was so
I don't know
upsetting.
what's going on your guys' Twitter feeds.
Sydney and
We're
I
just
see the
having a good
same
time.
thing.
Having
I
a
don't
good time
know.
over here.
At first, I was like, cool tattoo. And then I was like, nipples. And I was like, it's fake.
Honestly, you probably saw that because I liked it.
Yeah,
popped
probably.
up in
Thanks
her
for
feed.
bringing that to me. But
You're
anyway.
welcome.
I did get that. You guys were going wild in the group chat earlier, and that octopus guy did pop up on my TikTok. So thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Everybody should know about the family.
Didn't
that
click any
is-
of those links. I get it regardless because just the
I've liked
osmosis.
so many of them.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I mean, there's so much more to this movie than that, but we
Yeah.
had to get that off our chest.
Yeah, it's a shame because nobody asked so many questions about that in the Q&A, and I didn't ask any questions about that after because it felt a little rude. But I was kind of like, come on, why?
Yeah. I mean, that said, this is an incredible collaboration, this film. Many groups had to come together to get the
Oh my God,
funding
the
to create
opening
this
for
film.
this.
Yeah,
That
at
is
least
something-
7. I think 8, but
It's
at
9.
least 7. Oh, is it?
It's 9. Yeah. I was on Reddit a lot and people were like 9. Someone even said 10. I was like, I can't go back and check. So,
I wonder if the credits are on IMDb.
yeah. So basically a very fun movie going experience for this is like, you know, the little like production company little ditties that they do at the beginning of movies. There were 9 of them in a row. 9 of them in a row. It started to feel like a joke. People were starting to get uncomfortable. People were started to scream aloud in the theater because they didn't know what was happening. So that was really fun, but some of them were really cool and a lot of them were spooky. And
Yeah.
so it
And they
wasn't
answered a
even
question
too
about
many
that in the
cooks.
Q&A. Like,
Oh, yeah,
they
yeah?
said, like, you know, it is a little silly when you're watching it. And in my theater, both times, people, like, really lost it at the point that spooky pictures came up. Because that's, like, the last one. And it's like, it seemed like it was done.
Yeah.
And how could there possibly have been more? But then one more production company. But it was, like, their small budget movie. They got funding from all of these places or distribution from all of these places, support from all these places. Everybody deserves to have this shout when they're contributing like that. It's not like you just have like Universal whatever doing everything. So
Well,
credit where
I
credit
thought it
is
was
due.
great.
But
I
yeah,
thought it was
it's
great.
a little silly to watch.
I'd rather see more movies with 20 minutes of those at the beginning than, you know, 15,000 of them with just the same ones over and over, the same 3. Like, this is cool to see so many people, companies I never heard of before coming together and have this have like no or not many. It's
And
a
in
true
other
indie, right? It doesn't
movies-
have any big
Mhm.
production companies behind it. And they can make something that's so well thought out, except for the AI thing.
Right. And in other movies, you'll have sometimes like an extended title sequence where they'll like have all the credits in there the same way that they're like listing the cast up front. But this is not that kind of movie. It doesn't lend itself to that format. So it is easiest to just have like all the production company shouts in the beginning with their little
Yeah.
logo or graphic or animation, whatever it is. And
Do
I don't
you know
know.
what the budget was for this? It's
Let me
under a mil,
see
right?
if it's on IMDb. I don't know. I know
I didn't see
that.
a definitive number, but I saw less than $1 million.
Okay. I was gonna look up filming and production. I wonder if it's under there. Well, late night, the devil budget.
And it's an Australian film. Oh, that's the box office. Oh man, this movie's doing well. Okay.
Yeah, the Screen Rant article does not say what the actual budget is. It just says modest budget. So
Yeah, I read that it was under $1 million, so I don't know exactly what it is, but it was under $1 million, and I think that with that, it looks really, really good. There's some idiosyncrasies. There's one point in the movie where they didn't, I think, have all the filters on one of the shots to make it look old and like it was on a Technicolor TV, and it like stood out a lot to me, and I was like, why is he not weirdly have like pink eyeliner anymore? Because I don't know if you noticed that Jack,
was
the
that
main character.
at the point later in the movie though, with the
No.
like aspect? Okay.
No, it wasn't. It was in the middle of the movie.
Okay.
But there's just one point where I was like, oh, that looks a little bit different. But they did do a really good job because I thought that was really fun. The aspect ratio for this whole movie almost is a square because it's from when TVs were just a square, and that's how it was. And it starts out with a like kind of documentary style introduction to the movie, giving you the background about Jack Delroy and the creation of his late night talk show, Night Owls, right?
Yeah, Night Owl.
Night Owl. And I think the setup was really, really interesting, getting into how like this is his like last hurrah, how the show was very popular and then now it's not doing quite as well. And also getting into Jack Delroy's like history and his sort of sordid history, and interesting connections to certain groups known as the Grove.
Bohemian
And
Grove, which is a real place.
Did you know
I
about that already, Sydney?
Oh yeah, I literally call my house Bohemian Grove. Like that
didn't
is
know
what
that.
I named my house.
I didn't know that, and I had never heard of it before. So I was excited to learn about it, and it's fucking crazy. And I had a great time learning about it. We saw it with Danny. Danny was like, everybody knows about Bohemian Grove.
Yeah.
So that was overplayed. And I was like, well, I don't. And I was thrilled.
I wanted more of
Yeah, well, that was
the
Danny's thing too,
Bohemian
is like
Grove.
if you're gonna do this and it's a real thing and that is sort of in many ways an important element, even if a small element of the film, like why not have that be the movie? But I liked the movie we got.
Well, here's the thing that I found on TikTok.
Oh.
I was just like looking up theories or whatever, and I saw a couple of theories where people were like, I understand why this movie didn't have big production houses behind it and why it was so hard for them to get this
Because they're
movie out.
all part
Because
of
it
Bohemian Grove.
exposes Bohemian Grove for what
Grove.
they really are, a satanic cult thing, blah, blah, blah. Like deals with the devil to make you famous. Meanwhile, here I was sitting being like, is it a nod to Scientology? No. It's a whole other thing. But yeah, I was like, oh, that's so funny. I love that take. As an X-Files fan, I love a conspiracy theory. So that was thrilling to me that people are like, they're trying to silence Late Night with the Devil because it exposes the truth. But I was fascinated by Bohemian Grove, but I couldn't learn that much about it because I refused to watch the whole hour and a half long video from Alex Jones where he infiltrated Bohemian
Bohemian
Grove.
Jones.
Infiltrated? Okay.
Bohemian Jones.
The new Jonestown, ladies and gentlemen, is Bohemian Jones.
Why did it have to be him? Why couldn't it be somebody else that I wouldn't feel bad? Like, why'd it have to be InfoWars Alex Jones
Yeah.
who
Can't
broke
trust him.
into Bohemian Grove?
Can't
He was
trust
less
him.
insane back then.
I didn't know he was the
Well,
one
was
who
he?
broke into it.
He was.
I will say I have been looking for a giant owl to put in my backyard. So
Sure.
Okay.
so if you find one, let me know.
I love that owl mask. I love all the owl effigy shit. I mean, that just shows back to the movie, the fact that like it's showing those clips of that owl head, which is exactly the same as the mask I was telling you guys about. I don't know if I said it on the pod or in our other thing, but I've been watching that 80s movie Stage Fright, and there's like an owl mask that the killer wears, very similar to this mask. So I was like, interesting. But the fact that it's called Night Owl, the show is called Night Owl, like
Yeah.
obviously his whole shit is wrapped up in the grove. But I just loved that aspect of it, and there was just a lot more to think about. I like that they didn't make it the main focus of the whole movie too, because I like that there's just a little bit of setup, and then you're like experiencing what the American public, I guess, I mean, we'll get to the end later, what they experienced with a little bit of context. I liked that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in the Q&A they said that all of that like exposition in the beginning is something that kind of came as an idea later on in the process of like writing the script at least. Originally they were planning to just like drop you in with the beginning of the show and let it play out. I think presenting it as like a mockumentary made a lot more sense and really allows them to like lean into the format of like the behind the scenes footage as well, with like the black and white commercial space basically. I think it made a lot of sense to preface also what we were seeing, and I liked how so much of that like came back around later. I'm sure they would have found other ways to work it in. I think it was like a long setup in terms of payoff later on. So much of the movie is you're kind of like waiting for things to be relevant, but it like drops you into the world in an interesting way, and it has you like really experiencing the world and the slow build up and like getting little glimpses here and there of things.
No, totally. I agree with you. I thought that was interesting that they set it up as a mockumentary, and then I thought it was interesting how it ended not like that. There's no aftermath. It just fucking cuts to black, you know? Which was a little jarring for me, but I still think I liked it. Because sometimes it's annoying when they come back around to the documentary style thing, and then it's like you're not scared at the end of the movie. You're just like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm watching a documentary. Sometimes that like kind of fucks the momentum because you're not really
Right.
thinking about
Where are we
momentum as much
going?
in a documentary. Exactly.
And we talked about that a little with Hell House LLC also, where like sometimes when you have to like wrap up the narrative of a documentary, it ends up being a little silly because it's like nobody knows what happened or whatever. And it's like if you have to say
Yeah.
nobody knows what happened instead of just like leaving people to make their own conclusions, vibes
Being
are just
like,
different.
yeah, nobody knows. I don't
Yeah,
know
I did
because it
see
ended.
I did see criticism of this movie where it's like, why would they set that up to be the format if they're going to not stick strictly to it throughout the movie? But I think that is a very interesting element of this, and like
Yeah.
we'll get there when we get there. But I think the way that they like lead you in, I don't think they're trying to do like a super super strict thing, but I think the real time found footage element is like what you need emotionally for the payoff later on.
Yeah. And I mean, another thing that I saw discussed online and we also discussed after the movie is the black and white elements of this movie. So, like, basically, everything is in Technicolor that's like being shown and broadcasted to the public. and then once it cuts, it switches to it shows you an AI image, and then it switches to black and white. I'm gonna be petty a little bit longer.
And it also like
Sure, please.
changes the ratios. Like you go back to like basically full screen instead of the like square.
I think that's just that one
screen.
part.
It's just that one part. It's a square though every time it's black and white.
Really?
But
It wasn't for
yeah.
us. It was like a full screen every time it went to black and white.
Really?
That's weird.
And then like when it was like on TV, it like went back to like the ratio.
That's weird.
Huh. I remember it being all square because that
It
makes
was
the
all
end
square
as crazy
both
as
times
it
I
is.
saw it.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, I mean, some people were saying that that was like unrealistic, that they had this like black and white images coming through. Like, why were they having that behind the scenes footage? Blah, 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 blah. And then someone was like, they don't even acknowledge that camera. So it's like,
He looks
that
in it
part
like
is a
once, but
movie.
yeah.
I'm like, he does. No, he does. I'm not saying that. I was about to refute it because I was like, they do look in the camera a bunch of the times. Like when he's like, drinking or something like that, he like furtively looks at the camera. I don't know. I mean, like, you know how much I think about like the buy-in for found footage horror movies, and it really didn't take me out of it. You know, you have to give an inch some of the time with found footage movies to like get the information that you need, and I just think it makes sense that they would have behind the scenes cameras rolling sometimes. I don't know. That didn't
Yeah,
bother
they
me at
talked
all.
about that in the Q&A a little, where they were saying like the show, the Late Night Owl with Jack Delroy show was shot with like 3 cameras at all times, and then they kind of were like fudging it a little bit with like 2-ish backstage cameras. They're kind of just like playing with that a little bit. But I think, again, the format of it being like real time, minute by minute, you're watching, lends itself to being like, well, they're a live TV show. They just always keep the cameras rolling. And then whoever's like compiling the mockumentary is the one putting things in like black and white to distinguish like what was the live broadcast and what is just footage that they have. Like, would it really make sense necessarily for the TV filming cameras to follow them backstage and be filming like private conversations with the producer? Maybe not, but I think there's room enough to buy in and to be like, sometimes things happen backstage. This is their spooky episode. Like, they always want to be ready just in case something is happening, in case something needs to be captured. And also, you know, they very much have their business angle of what they're trying to do. So I'm also willing to buy into like they were recording their process, or they were documenting, or they wanted to make that something as well. And like if they expected this to be like big crazy TV hour, they want to maybe next year sell like how we did it. Like I'm willing to buy in.
I think that narratively too, it's so necessary that like I'm not mad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. At the end of the day, we're watching a movie and we know it's a movie and we know it's not real. So like that's fine that you broke the illusion a little bit.
I kind of
I
like
just
it better. Know what I mean? Like,
Oh, I like the
if it,
format of this exact. I wouldn't want it to be like strictly just
yeah,
the television
just the
broadcast
thing
or
you want to
whatever.
see the
no.
stuff like happening behind. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense.
Give me the
Also,
drama.
it
Give me
wouldn't
the
build
behind the scenes
tension.
conversations.
It wouldn't build tension in the same way either. You know what I mean? You wouldn't know Christow's dead. You wouldn't know how Gus is so nervous the whole time and how he's like, people are freaking out about what you have planned for later on in the show. It adds
And
anxiety
like the drama with
in a
June of like
Right, the little like
way.
romantic like
Mhm.
things he's like whispering to her, you know, offset.
Yeah. I mean, okay, can we talk about Christow really quickly?
Christu?
Because Christu, sorry. He is so amazing to me. That whole part, I love the cast of characters because they really are characters. Okay, not all of them. Some of them make me really mad. Like Carmichael makes me want to
So
kill
annoying.
everyone.
Oh,
I
he was
want to
so
throw him.
annoying.
I'm glad he gets what's coming to him. But Christu is so theatrical, so insane. And I do think it was fun though to have that dynamic between everyone they brought on the show and Carmichael, having him be the skeptic
foil
and the
for everybody.
naysayer. Yeah. Even though it was infuriating to watch because he's so annoying, he's so pompous. It was really, really fun. But I think that having Christu be the first one, and have it be so obviously fake, and how lame all of his stuff is, like the audience plant with Barry, the fucking guy in the audience who's like doing his little comedy routine.
Well, that was my wonder, is they Leo makes a comment about him where he's like, "Oh, do you like our friend Barry or whatever?" I kind of wonder, like, was he not an audience plant and was just a guy who was like, "I'm fucking taking my 15 minutes of fame. I'm on TV. My mom's gonna see me. Like, blah blah blah. This is my chance to be funny." And then like it was like, "All right, guy, like move on." Like I don't think he was necessarily there to be the stick
I
in the
took
mud.
that
To
conversation as them talking about how they had that planned.
I
That's
think
what I
they
took
made
that
him
conversation.
be like, whatever he says, you say, like, that's it, and
You
then kind of like
know.
foil him. But I think, like, obviously, Christu is legit.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
So I think the mother and daughter was legit, and then obviously,
Well, the mother and daughter was partially not legit. I think that Christu has some sort of abilities, because otherwise, what the fuck, was
The mini
happening
thing, yeah.
later. I think that's what it's based on. But I think with any sort of like spiritual, like sort of like reading spirit signs gift like that, there's not always going to be some
Can't do it on
business to
demand.
attend to. Yeah, you can't do it on demand like that. And so that's why he has his assistant go into the lobby and question everyone with a million questions, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah, I think
that's
it's
what
like
happened with Eddie thing.
Eddie Edmond. Yeah, I think his
Mhm.
powers are legit, but if you're gonna make that your job, then you need to be able to perform on command. And if your powers don't work that way, then yeah, he has to do what is like the very typical stagecraft of it all, which is like a cold read on the audience to see like who's responding to you, who's looking for something. You have like they say
Mhm.
Carmichael when he's like bugging them later is like, "Oh, you guys all everybody here had to fill out a Q&A before you could even be part of the audience." Like, "Oh, Christu's wife was interviewing you before you came out here and like sat down in the seats." Like, yeah, they're building their case so that he can reliably perform. But again, I do think, I mean, with the mini stuff, I guess you could make an argument that that was like a one time only thing, but the way that he engaged with it, I think he can do it. It's like Professor Trelawney in Harry Potter. Sorry to bring up Harry Potter, but I think it's like that where it's like
Okay.
most of the time she's just like whatever, but every now and then, like one every 15 years, she'll get like a real something. You know what I
She's
mean?
got
And
it
then
in
it's
her
like,
blood.
yeah, like it's there, but it is not something that you can do like a dog performing a trick.
Yeah, I think that if he didn't have any experience with having these real interactions with spirits, that he would have just fucking
You
wigged
would
the
have been
fuck
freaked out by the
out.
mini
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, and he would have just like left. You know what I mean? Like, how if you've been lying for years that you've had this power, and then you finally experience it, that would be pretty shocking. Be like, whoa, I manifested that.
yeah, he's not gonna just sit there coughing, being like,
Yeah.
I just love the way that whole thing played out, though. It was so good. Like his eyes rolling back in his
that I
head.
think was the scariest part of the whole thing for me, because I like was not expecting it, and it made me go, ooh.
It was,
Well, yeah,
I
because
love
at
the
first you're
body
like, is
horror
he just
in this.
dialing into his act? Like he's just doing like a last minute flashy something because maybe people are skeptical and he's like driving it home, and it's like, no, you're not sure what's happening. The host is so clearly slightly unsure what's happening, and then as soon as his eyes start to roll, you're like, oh shit, something real now.
And it's only one at a time, which was so
Uh-huh.
nasty. Also, shout out to Chris Dew because he's sitting there internally bleeding and dying while this man, Carmichael, is coming for his career. Poor guy. What an uncomfortable last 25 minutes of his life. Like, truly, he deserved better. He had that fancy suit. Someone in the comments on YouTube for that clip, because that clip is on YouTube, was saying like, "Oh, I love how his accent slips during the mini part
Yeah.
too."
Yes, I love
I
that.
didn't notice that at first, but yeah, like he puts on this like hyper like
Mystic sort of thing.
mystic exotic,
Which is so interesting because I
air
felt like the
quotes kind
music
of
they played
voice.
him in with was very like Middle Eastern, Egyptian, blah blah blah, and then he's like
Yeah.
Spanish or whatever. He's speaking Spanish.
Yeah, there were some inconsistencies, which honestly fuels the
Classic
fire.
70s,
But
yeah.
also
Yeah,
classic
it was
70s.
They're like,
It
oh,
felt
it's
right for a late
something
night program.
They were like,
yeah.
which
never
culture are we
seen.
gonna appropriate now?
For
He's
real,
doing
that was
his
the
thing that's not
vibe.
even his real accent, and then like they're not even getting it right what his thing is. They're just being like, what's spooky, otherworldly, supernatural? Oh, I know. So
It was beautiful. And honestly, I loved the vomiting.
Oh,
The vomiting made
The
me
sludge,
jump.
floating.
sludge vomiting, great.
That it slapped. It slapped so hard. And yeah, I guess I just love the pacing in this too, because there's all this insanity. Like the fact that everyone backstage is rushing so much. There's so many little details, like that one man who's in charge, Phil, that's his
Phil.
name. Phil,
Love
who's in
Phil.
charge of the cameras. Like they keep being like, we're not seeing what you're seeing on there. Like everything's working fine up here. So there's obviously some sort of like weird like electricity things that are continuing to happen when the lights all explode, like, and they can shack a bunch of it up to like poor wiring or whatever, and it's the 70s. But like shit is falling apart, but everything rides on this. This is sweeps week. Like if this show doesn't do well, they're done. So the stakes are really high. The stakes are very high. Do we want to talk a little bit about his deceased wife part before we get into the Lily of it all?
What's her name?
No, yes.
What's her name? Like he calls her Minnie, but what's her
Madeline.
Madeline. I kept wanting to
Madeline.
call her Melissa, and I'm like, that's not right.
It's an M name.
I didn't give a shit about her. I'm so sorry because like with the whole like stuff, it's so quick that like I just don't care. Like I'm not invested in her enough for it to like do anything. Like that was my big qualm of the movie. It's like she plays such a role and I do not give a shit about her.
Oh, I
that
was
might be
moved by that
you,
in the
though.
beginning part. Yeah, I was in the beginning part. I was like, because it's such like a comeback kid story too. You're kind of like rooting for him because of that intro part where like he's had this tragedy. And for me, it worked. For me, it worked. He's had this tragedy. Like she came on the show. Like it doesn't make sense how she died. Like how could this happen?
Well, I
And
thought
then
that
like
it doesn't make sense how she died was a little silly because they're like, she's never been a smoker, but she got lung cancer. And it's like, I don't know, maybe they
Like,
don't
there's
know about
so many
secondhand smoke
ways
yet, but
you
this is the
it was
70s
yeah, they
and everybody's smoking inside. So, like, to me,
Chelsea.
it doesn't seem like a mystery,
Yeah,
but
it's the 70s. Of course
Nobody
people didn't
knew.
know that. You could still smoke in airplanes. That's the whole thing.
You could smoke indoors up until the 90s.
I'm just saying, while I understand from the character's perspective that it was a shock diagnosis, it didn't feel, from the audience perspective of someone watching the movie, it didn't strike me as something to file away until they brought it back later and were like, here's why it's relevant.
Yeah, no,
Um,
totally. I agree with you there. Like I didn't expect the like spoilers for the whole rest of the movie. We're 45 minutes in. I didn't expect the whole like, oh, she was your blood sacrifice for your fame thing, but probably because I didn't know what Bohemian Grove was. So I was like, whoa, is it like fancy Scientology. It's crazy. I mean, I think that Scientology does that too, but that's just me being a conspiracy theorist. I tried to infiltrate the Celebrity Scientology Center, but I got nowhere.
But yeah, I mean, about her role in the movie, I guess I don't know that I cared that much about like Madeline as her own individual person necessarily, but their relationship and what it was to him and the state that it left him in, I thought was like very
Yeah.
compelling for them to present it as like they were this Hollywood darling couple in a lot of ways. That was like a big part of his appeal was that he was like a wife guy and his wife was famous and that they were so in love and so obsessed with each other and like at events together, blah blah blah. The
Yeah.
highlight of his show, the biggest episode they ever had was the one where she was on, and unfortunately it came like at the end
2
of her
weeks
life. Yeah,
before
2
she
weeks.
died.
And that was the peak of their ratings, which again ties into the sacrifice later on. But to have it be like that was as high as it ever got was the episode where he had his wife on and now she's dead. So it's not like he can ever have her back and hope for another ratings spike. It's like he just has to get increasingly weird
That's what he
and
thought.
desperate and branch out. Yeah, that's what he thought. But I don't know. I thought it left us with a good place with him where we have insight into his internal experience without it being a movie that's like from his perspective.
This movie is like less, it's like a short movie, right?
Yeah.
Like it's less than an hour and a half. I want more of them because I was not, again, like
I don't
their
know
thing
how
was
you
just
would.
so quick that
Mhm.
it didn't impact, like it made no impact to me. I was like, oh, that sucks that she's dead. And now he's sad and he's struggling. But like it just either like I wanted more of him, like I needed more of his background story for me to kind of care more about them.
Mhm.
Okay.
I thought his performance was moving though.
He did a great like acting job, but I think
And I
this
got
would
like
make
the heartbreak from him.
an incredible limited series, TV series instead of a movie.
What would you do with all the episodes?
You would have episodes, but it would be like you would follow him and his wife and like that, so you have like him being secret Bohemian Grove stuff. There'd be episodes like specifically following like June, all this kind of stuff, so we like see more about like Lily and all that kind of stuff, and then the finale is the last like TV show thing, so you're like
So
seeing all
more
these...
like a docu-series kind of style. If you space it out like that, for sure, but it's all the 1 hour long.
I don't
And
think
then the finale is like
special.
the movie.
I think it would be just the like the found footage of it all would be the last episode. They'd be like,
Right,
what
but would the first episodes in your vision, are the first episodes like narrative, or is
Yes.
it like they're also documentary
No,
style, like
it's
here are the
narrative.
cast of
And then
characters you're
the
going
finale
to meet?
one is like what you're about to see is the last, like, is the episode that aired, blah 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 blah. And it's just like the finale is the like you're watching all the stuff.
I'd love
like-
to see an interpretation like that. That would be cool.
But like
Just because I want more of this, because I loved it.
here's the thing, the story itself is good, it just like wasn't fleshed out enough for me.
Okay.
It left me just like aesthetically it was great, uh but I just like, I don't know if it was just so hyped or if I like wanted more, but I was just not emotionally invested in any of the characters even though I like them. I will say Lily was freaky as shit. Whoever the little
Oh,
actor
Ingrid
is,
Torelli.
she
She was so fucking good. Wait, okay.
crushed it.
Let's talk about that part because I liked that whole little mini documentary that they had in there too. I think that was very, very necessary to give you more context about
But Diabo or whatever it was.
Diabo. His fucking oh, it's spelled D-I-A-B-O. apostrophe abo, but it sounds like Diablo. That's so funny. LOL. That's a stage name if I've ever heard one. That's like Johnny Mountain. If you guys are familiar, or Dallas Rains weathermen. They're weathermen in the Los Angeles area. Thank you. But his fucking giant like 70s style red devil collar shirt was sending me. I was like, yeah. If only it had been a dagger collar because it was too floppy for me. That was bothering me. Dagger collar
It
has
needed
the
some more
stays
starch.
in it. The stays in it. It was too floppy.
And he's got the ceremonial, or why did I say that? Ceremonial, sacrificial. I guess I combined them. He's got his fancy evil dagger, so the
you
dagger
gotta do it.
collar
And
would
the
have been on theme.
skull bowl was so good. Also,
We watched House of the Devil before. Yeah.
My first fucking thought when they started showing it is like the first bitch they show, they're like in a house like any other. And the house looks like shit, by the way. So I don't know. It looks a little sinister.
That's just what houses looked like in the 70s.
It had a bad paint job, but it like goes into the house and the first person you see is like the hottest bitch alive. And I was like, of course the Satanists are hot. Like, of course the women in the satanic cult are the most beautiful women you've ever seen. That's how they lure you in. But yeah, I thought that whole thing was really interesting. It was like, giving some Jonestown. Is that the one where everybody there was the shootout kind of thing?
No, that's the one
where he drank the Kool-Aid.
Jonestown is drinking the Kool-Aid.
Waco
okay,
is
similar.
the shootout.
This is sort of like it was like combo of Waco and Jonestown because they all killed themselves by self-immolation. So that's similar to Kool-Aid. But there's also the standoff like Waco. So I liked those little references in there. But the whole like the images of like Lily being like saved from the wreckage, I was dying. But I love it. It's so many references to so many horror movies. Like you're getting Omen vibes, you're getting all of that. So many references to real satanic cults or just real cults.
The Soul Survivor thing also felt like Heaven's Gate adjacent of like, was she left behind on purpose for some mysterious reason?
plot.
Or did she just get lucky?
Yeah.
She's an industry plant.
She's a plant.
How did you guys feel about what's her name? Dr. June Ross Mitchell having a little romance with Jack Delroy? Did you like that being an aspect of this? What did you think?
Who could blame her?
I mean, yeah.
I think
yeah.
Who could blame her?
I think it played a role in the sense that she clearly was like resistant in a lot of ways to being on this show, to participating in this way. Obviously, we see her get live TV peer pressured into doing the demonstration, but I think if she didn't have a personal relationship with Jack and have personal, not investment in his success, but like care for him and he's invested in his success, I think she would have walked away and said no and said fuck off a lot earlier. So I think that's like how we get her being so resistant but going along.
Good
so
point,
I think
good
like
point.
narratively it plays a really big role. I didn't care emotionally. It did give us that moment with Abraxas where he's like, "Oh, you're new whore." And so that kind of, the first time around at least, gave me I think unfair impression that Jack was maybe slimier than he was, and it kind of led me to like question how earnest the relationship with the wife was versus like how it had been portrayed in the media of that world. So I think that was that could have been maybe navigated a little differently potentially.
Yeah.
But on a second watch, when you like know what the deal is, it's easy enough to parse and be like, well, he's heartbroken and it's been over a year and why shouldn't he be allowed to have a romantic relationship? And like that's how the book came across his desk, and he's like exploiting it because of their personal relationship to try and have something amazing, and why he like buys into it and thinks he can rely on it in the first place. Like I think narratively it is playing an important role.
And men like historically always move
They
on like
can't be
really quickly.
alone.
They
Oh my
move
God,
on
they
really
don't know how to be
fast.
Like
alone,
they
especially
move
with their
on
grief.
so fast.
But here's the thing. I mean, I totally hear what you're saying, where you're like, oh, you can explain away a lot of the things and a lot of things that he does. But I think that he is incredibly morally gray character. Obviously, he's making these choices that aren't correct. Like they aren't in the best interest of everyone. They're in the best interest of the show, which is him. He is the show, you know what I mean? Even though the producer is all right there trying to do the same thing. But I like that with everything that goes on in this movie, even though like I felt emotionally like for Jack and I was rooting for him, you don't know for sure how much he knew about what he was doing, I would say. And I think that he pushes things in so many ways and asks people to go past what they're comfortable with in so many ways. Where like he might have just seemed like the nicest, loveliest guy in the world, and he might have known more than he thought he did. And at the end of the day, when it comes to the end of the movie, he knew what he was doing in the way that he was sacrificing something, and he was willing to do that. And he's a fucking idiot if he didn't think it would be a person. You know what I mean? So his
Or
naivete
something
doesn't,
important to him, the cost of
yeah,
magic.
then his naivete doesn't make him like a sympathetic character for me. I
Yeah.
don't know the extent of it, but I like that he could be this fucking evil guy who's getting his comeuppance, or he could just be a fucking idiot who's trying to get famous, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think he is for sure a selfish, ambitious man who wants fame and success.
Yeah.
I don't think the movie really wants you to question the love that he has for his wife. And I think if they didn't want you to question that at all at any point, it could use some tweaks, because I think it's one of those things where like as the author you know what you're writing, and these brothers Colin and Cameron Cairns, they wrote it, they directed it, they edited it. I think sometimes you can't tell like what from your brain is making it onto the page completely clearly. And if that was not a question that they wanted audiences to be asking at some point, there were a few too many things that made it seem questionable.
No, totally.
I think for them, it was like they knew he loved his wife so much, and that was like the most important relationship to him. And it just never ever occurred to him that that would be something that he could be putting at risk. But he was willing to risk whatever else anybody else. He's willing to put Gus at risk. He's willing to put June at risk. He's willing to put Lily at risk. Like he doesn't care about that. I don't think from their perspective, I don't think they thought that he ever was knowingly risking his wife's life.
Yeah. I think it could go either way, but that probably was their intention because they wanted him to be
And you see like a one
lovable.
tear track like on his cheek after the first Christou read, where he's like, I think that reading was for me, the unmarried man with the wedding ring, and Minnie was her private nickname. Like, and the way he holds that back at first, you know what I mean? Like that's not something that
He doesn't want to reveal it
wants
on the
to
show.
share at first. Yeah, until he's
even though
trying
that
to
would
be
be great for ratings because they
right.
fucking love that bitch, you know. Yeah,
So I
no,
think for
that's
him,
fair.
his like love and grief is a little private. And that's why she was never on the show before either, even though she was a performer and she was a famous person. And it would have been easy to be like, come do a regular segment. People love to see you. People love to see us together. Like, I think that was his very genuine, earnest private life for Jack. And I think he's just a stupid idiot who
He is
didn't
a
care what the
dumbass.
consequences were, because he never imagined that he wouldn't just get everything that he wanted.
Yeah.
Consequences don't happen to me.
Classic.
I'm happy to do arcane ritual sacrifice, and I'm happy to exploit this 13-year-old girl that was raised in a cult where babies were bred for baby sacrifice.
Sacrifice.
Yeah, and I'm happy to have her on and have her go through this crazy demonic possession that I believe is real, and then be like, "You guys got to come back next week. Like, we'll make this a regular." Like, he's
Regular.
an asshole. He's an asshole, but
He's for sure an asshole.
I will say
I
we're
just
not
didn't think it
doing
would affect
enough
him personally.
sacrifices. We're not doing enough human sacrifices. I'm gonna say. Should we do one for the
Are
podcast?
you adding this to your platform?
I'm scared.
Once
Are
I get
you
my
adding this
giant
to your
owl in my
platform?
backyard, we're gonna do some sacrificing for the
So
I'll
what's
do
it
rituals,
now?
but I don't know that I'll do
Makeout points?
sacrifices.
Yeah,
Make out
opium dens, makeout points, human
and
sacrifice.
human sacrifices. Wow.
You
it's
guys
getting
remember
more
Jennifer's
and
body
more
and how that went, don't you?
desirable.
So
More and
I don't
more
know, guys.
desirable.
Yeah,
Okay, wait.
Jennifer's body, an absolute slay of a movie. Sounds good to
An
me.
absolute slay of a movie, but it didn't work out for Jennifer, and it didn't work out for the guys, and
Well,
Who says
Jennifer
we're
was the
making
one
rules for the
being
guys?
sacrificed, Chelsea. So of course it wasn't going to work
I'm
out
just
for her.
saying.
But you just need to distance yourself from the sacrifice's humanity, and then you'll be fine.
Oh,
Work
great.
on
It's
that.
for
Let
the
me
greater
do low
good.
shoulder. I love low shoulder.
But okay, really quickly before we talk more about Lily, I just want to say that I love that the theremin was a character in this film. Like it's the star. The theremin is the star. I really enjoyed that. Every time the theremin came into play, it was very important to me. But probably most important to me is Lily because that bitch and that demon within her loves the camera.
Mr.
They're
Wriggles.
hamming it up.
That's what
Abraxas.
Carmichael Haig says. He's like, Abraxas must be the ultimate performer.
He's
Oh,
a
yeah.
demon, of course he is.
Oh yeah,
He
I love
loves
that
the
shit.
spotlight. He's spreading his message.
He
I-
lives for it.
First thought his name was Mr. Wiggles instead of Wriggles. But and all I could think about were the Wiggles, and all I was thinking about was
Oh.
the demon being like
Fruit salad.
salad.
Yes.
Yummy,
Yummy, yummy.
That's
like
so funny.
I will say about Mr. Wriggles as a name, it did give me very strong Captain Howdy vibes from The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Which I think is
Totally.
probably intended.
That's probably
Well,
intentional.
and
yeah.
we get like a very when Lily's strapped to the chair and we first meet Mr. Wriggles,
And his
she
little
like
eyes peeking
and
out.
it's very much giving Linda Blair in The Exorcist. So
Oh yeah, I mean everything that is an exorcist spawns from the exorcist. Everything that's an exorcism is in response to the exorcist. You know what I mean? Like
it all comes back to The Exorcist.
it all comes back to the exorcist. Can't believe I went so long without seeing it. Now I can see it everywhere all the time. But I just loved how weird Lily was. Even when she was Lily, she was so
Unsettling.
unsettling, strange. Like
the way she was
something
looking at
off.
the camera always, like she was looking through your soul.
Seriously. And I do love Dr. June Ross Mitchell. I thought she was one, a babe, and two, fire suit.
Also
Fire vest
highly
suit.
educated. She has a grad
3.
degree from Stanford.
Genius.
She's not just called a parapsychologist, she is
She
one.
is one. But yeah, no, I mean, I thought that her work that she was doing was very honorable, except for the fact that it was breaking so many rules.
All the
It was the
ethical
70s, they
boundaries are
weren't
being
real
crossed.
rules.
Yeah.
So many
Did
ethical
they have anything
boundaries.
established where you shouldn't adopt your patients yet at that point? I think it's
No.
fine.
It was the 70s. This
Really?
episode is the reason we have those laws.
Oh, they watched this on TV in the 70s and they said, maybe there should be a little bit of separation.
Maybe we need
Yeah, maybe
some
we
Maybe
boundaries.
she should have someone advocating
Do
for
something
her who
about
isn't
that.
professionally benefiting from exploiting her.
Yeah,
we should
making
all learn
money, selling a
boundaries.
book about her. Yeah. So there's obviously some moral quandaries. There's moral quandaries left and right. But I thought that the makeup was so cool when she did start like turning into the demon.
And her hair goes wavy and oily.
Yeah, and the green, like her eyes are a different color. The hovering was very cool. Like the whole thing was super awesome. But like I liked that part, but I think what I liked the most out of this whole segment, and some people didn't like it from what I've seen online, but I really liked how the hypnotism shit went down. I don't know.
Mhm.
I thought that that was really, really cool. And it, like, Carmichael, I wanted to kill him the whole time, but like, that was so genius on his character's part to like hypnotize the entire American populace, you know, and make them see
Mhm.
this thing and then playing back the tapes. That was just brilliant.
It
And
was
how
so
like
good.
Yeah.
I and I love the worms. I love that it was worms. That
Worms.
body horror was so fucking disgusting with Gus.
Yes.
And the big worm coming out of his eye. I was like, this is too crazy. It can't
I
be
didn't
real.
like the big worm.
Oh, I liked the big worm.
I
I
I liked his
liked
eye
big
popping
worm.
out.
I didn't like the
That
big
kinda-
worm, but I loved like the big worm. I was like, okay, this is just silly now.
I feel like that was the point that he turned it into the big worm. So he could be like, this is too crazy. And then he's like, that's because you've been hypnotized.
You've been
Gotcha.
big
bitch.
worm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think he really laid the groundwork for that well as a character, and within the writing of the movie, with like earlier when he's got the dagger and he's like, ah, I can't stop it, and everyone in the audience is like, what's happening? And then he's like, you are a very suggestible lot. Good to know. And he is so clearly like planning his schemes, and his whole thing is like debunking everything. So anytime he sees something, he's like, here's how I can prove that that can be faked. So I thought that
Because
they
he knows
did,
because he's a magician. I loved that
yeah.
aspect of it. He's like, I know the secret behind all the tricks. All the
Mhm.
illusions.
And he's got all the like silly shit in the beginning where he's like, "Oh, where's my cigar? Oh, is it over here? Oh, my flame."
Where's the
He's
$100,000 check? It's in your pocket, Jack.
your pocket, which is so silly because obviously we're seeing the behind the scenes, and no, he didn't like go put this in your breast pocket, but like the audience knows that this is after a commercial break. It was just like silly magician stuff. But I thought it was so interesting the way that they do that. And I'm going to want to talk about that versus what we see later, more in the like climax. Because the effects in this scene look a little silly. They look good. They look like poltergeist style effects. You know what I mean? They don't look like radically different from that. So it's the kind of thing where you could be like, oh, this is just what, like the worm stuff.
The worm stuff. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah, where you could just be like, well, this is what practical effects look like in movies sometimes, especially in something that is ostensibly like a
From the
70s. Like
70s.
this is just what
Yeah.
it looked like. You know what I mean?
They were just working with the best that they had.
Right. And like also within our real world, this is again a low budget movie. They said during the Q&A, the ripping open the stomach with the worms, that was one take. They only had one take to do it and get it right. And so they just,
that's funny.
yeah, they couldn't even like preview the effects ahead of time, really. They basically just had to like hope it worked out on camera, and they just had 3 cameras running so that they could like have it from different angles and be cutting between. So they kind of just had to trust their special makeup, special effects guy. But it looks a little fake, and so you're like, am I seeing what am I seeing necessarily? And then for them to be like, and it was hypnosis, so we just needed your brain to be like, is this real? Am I supposed to think this is real? What am I watching? Like your experience as a real person in the real world, sitting in the AMC watching this movie, is good enough for like what they're having the in studio audience within the universe feel as well. So I thought that worked really well, and I thought it was really fun and interesting. And then for him to be like, and I hypnotized everybody, I hypnotized the audience, that's why you saw it, that's why you experienced it, even though what we're showing you is the actual tapes. We're not showing you what the actual camera showed, even though we see what the camera was filming later on, because you're hypnotized. So I thought that was great and really effective.
Yeah, because at first I was like, wait, but then like, how did I see that? But then I was like, oh, it's because me as a viewer, I was supposed to be hypnotized as well, even me sitting in the AMC. So
yeah, they showed
that was
us the
cool.
big giant spinning hypno wheel.
Yeah, we saw it. I've been hypnotized before, so I
Did
believe
you
it.
quack like a duck?
I did not quack like a duck. I did perform Lady Gaga's Poker Face for my entire senior class, and Chelsea was there. I slayed it. I did slay it. And I had like no inhibitions. He was like, sing Lady Gaga's Poker Face, and I jumped off of the stage into the crowd. I was really working the crowd. Anyway, it just makes you like I could probably maybe not do stuff, but like I was like, I'm down to clown, you know? I'm already down to clown, but I was like, I'm super
super down to
to
clown.
clown.
Yeah.
Like, be Lady Gaga? Of course.
I've got
Of
a
course.
reason to clown.
Yeah.
Now.
It's just suggestibility, so it was fun. But anyway, so the finale. We're getting to the finale here. Because after it is revealed and proven to be a hypnosis scenario, they get the smart idea of saying, I think it's the doctor, is like, well, why don't we
No, Lily says it.
Oh, it's Lily's idea. Yeah, of course, because
yeah, which makes so much sense. Also, if Mr. Wriggles is with her, Abraxas is lower. Not Abraxas, I guess it wasn't. It's one of his minor demons, maybe. But if Mr. Wriggles is still with us, even if he's hiding right now and not super present because her hair is clean and straight, it's like he has an agenda. You know what I mean? So he's like, yeah, let's see that it's real. Show everybody that it's real. Run the tapes. Let's get into it, Queen. Like, roll it back.
yeah, and shit just goes fucking nuts. And this is where people are really divided about how they feel about this ending. I know, Chelsea, you fucking loved it and it was a highlight for you. I think I really loved it, but I really want to see it again to make sure, because parts of it I was like, nyeh. But yeah, anyway, you lead this part.
Well, I want to know what Sydney thought of it, actually. What did you think of like that as the climax? Before we even get to the like cut when everything goes static. Like, what did you guys think of the way that played out with like Lily's head cracking open and electricity shooting out of her body, and she
love
goes
that.
I thought that was the
full-
dumbest thing I have ever seen. And I
right,
like
a little
dumb
bit
shit,
like
but I was like, why is her head cracking? Why is it like, I was like, I don't know. I feel like there could have been like, I get that they were trying to like show it, but the skull didn't need to crack
it
open
looks
like that.
a little silly. Yeah, it looks pretty silly, which is why I like that that's not just like where the movie ends and that there's more that comes after it, where that almost becomes like secondary to what the movie is about and secondary to the real climax of the film, even though that's like the action climax. But again, it does look a little silly, and it reminds me of the moment earlier on where in the hypnosis scene, like it looks a little silly. And like I was saying, you really only need the audience to be unsure if they're buying into the reality of the universe in the movie or not for that to work. And I kind of wonder if it is maybe the same thing here a little bit. When I talked to the director, I talked to Colin Cairns. I only got to talk to one of them because I'm one person and I can only be in one place at a time.
What
But
the
I talked to
hell,
Colin.
Chelsea?
I
Why didn't you
know. Let
talk
me
to
just
all of
split my
them?
body.
Why didn't you split in half like Lily?
I got a picture with both. Don't worry. But
Iconic.
yeah, I really wanted to ask him about the aspect ratio. And I kind of just said things, and then I was like, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. And he's kind of like, yeah, kind of like what you said. And I was like, oh, okay. But I like how it is kind of taking you into the psychology of his brain and his like fracturing mind after witnessing this. And it's very much like the time is a flat circle thing that we love I love to say, I guess I don't know if you guys love to say it as much as I love to say it. But the time is a flat circle thing where it's like everything is kind of like untied from the timeline and happening all at once, and it's like hard to parse and separate. And I thought the payoff for all that stuff at the beginning made that so effective also too, where it's like the
Yeah,
cave woman scene comes back around, like
the
the
spider.
bird spider, but now it's a big worm, and like the lady spinning the wheel, but now it's the hypnosis wheel. Like I thought the way that that was done artistically was really cool, but I also thought emotionally it was very effective for them to present it as this real-time found footage thing where suddenly that's not what you're watching. You're like here with the character experiencing what he's experiencing, right there with him feeling what he's feeling. I thought that was really great. And then I said, and then you go back to reality at the end and you go back to the aspect ratio. And Colin Cairns was kind of like, or is it? And I was like, or is it? What do you mean, sir? What do you mean, or is it reality? And he was kind of like, well, that's up to you. That's kind of like the audience interpretation. But one thing that Danny said that was interesting to me was last night, he kind of was, well, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but my impression of what he was saying, at least, was that he doesn't think there was any possession necessarily at all, and that whole like final action climax was all Jack Delroy, and like having a psychotic break, and like everything that we saw at the end had been Jack, not just Lily with the dagger, but like everything had been Jack. And so I think there's a read for that also, especially given how kind of silly it looks and how that ties into the worm stuff. Like, again, the movie has set up this premise where they're like, we're showing you what really happened, but we've also told you now that you can't trust what you saw for yourself. So you kind of have to interpret it in your own and come to your own conclusions.
I don't agree with Danny's take on it. I don't
Okay.
think, and not that it's not a cool take. I think it is a really cool take, but my take's a little bit different. I've been ruminating on it while you were telling me all of those amazing things, and I honestly am so jealous you got to talk to the directors. So cool. But I was kind of like taken aback by this ending at first because, like, at first I really liked it, and then I was like, oh, what does this aspect ratio mean for the credibility as found footage and what is happening? And then I was like, okay, well, there's like crazy demon shit happening, so like I can like suspend my disbelief for a moment here. But now I'm thinking about it more, and I think I have an idea. So I know that the head splitting thing is stupid, because it looks dumb, but I thought it also looked sick. So that, okay, you guys thought it looked dumb. My immediate thing I said was I thought it was cool. I thought it looked cool. Here's my idea for this. Throughout the movie, we've had our boy Phil on the cameras being like, I'm not seeing what you're seeing. The cameras are working fine from here, blah, 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 blah. There's obviously something happening with the electricity on the set, with the powers on the set, with the television broadcast on the set. I think that Abraxos, or the lesser demon in that moment, and this might sound crazy, but it's a demon. It can do whatever it wants. It's like harnessing that power, literally, because they have the power of electricity. It's that multicolored light that looks like the broadcast or a projection or something like that. And I think there's something with that power that projects us as the viewer into Jack's mind. And so that's why we can see what we can see. Because obviously this demon has some sort of power over the broadcast in and of itself. And so it takes you on that. Exactly. It takes you on that journey. It doesn't matter that your TV's aspect ratio is only the square. Like, things are going beyond the realms
You're
of
being brought into the
physicality.
world of the TV.
Yeah. You're being brought into the world. You're being brought out of it, whatever it is. Like, the rules no longer apply, because obviously the rules no longer apply when there is a demon involved. Crazy things happen. People levitate. People can break your bones in an instant. You know what I mean? And so I think because they did that electricity thing where her head splits in two and all of that, was a visual way to show that like Abraxas or whoever the fuck that demon is taking the reins, has got the wheel in hand, and is going to be directing the last bit of this television broadcast. So that, think about it that way, made me like it a lot more.
That makes sense. I think that's an interesting read. I also think they do a couple different more like quote unquote subliminal things. There that moment I think it's the moment literally right before everything goes crazy, because they're going to review the tapes of the Lily Mr. Wriggles possession. Um, and instead he's like stopping before that because there's something weird in the playback where it's like glitching, and they're going frame by frame, and then he finally lands perfectly on the frame, and you see like Minnie's ghost. And then when it cuts to him watching, you see like a ghostly hand on his shoulder,
Yeah.
and then nobody's standing there when you cut to a different angle. But there's a couple more things like that throughout that I didn't notice, but the writer directors kind of hinted at. And on IMDb trivia, it says that there's a moment in Carmichael's watch, I think, where you can see Minnie. And there's
Yes,
a moment in a
yes.
mirror backstage
Yes.
where you can see her. Yeah.
I noticed one of them while I was watching. I was so proud of myself. I meant to think about it later, but I forgot until now. It's when, I think it's the pocket watch, or there's a mirror. It's part of like the kits of shit that they got from the Devil House, I think, from Dabo's house. There's like, I think it's there. And it might also it probably also shows in the watch, but there's like a circular thing that was black. God damn it. Hearts. There's a circular thing that was black, and then for a second it has a face, and it was like a bald-headed face. And then I was like, oh, what was that? I don't remember that being there before. And then it showed it again and it was black. And I was like, pigeon pin, and then I forgot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, here is my additional take. Is I think it sure could be Abraxas, and we saw the face coming through the static that looked very stereotypical devil-y. It could be that he is using Minnie's image to taunt Jack Delroy specifically, or gain more access to him because he's desperate to see his wife and to be able to have some connection with her in the beyond, and like that's his vulnerability. It could be that Abraxas literally has possession of her soul because Jack sold it essentially to him for success.
Yeah.
Or it could be that Minnie's like, you fucking little bitch, you sold my soul. Like, guess what, bitch? I'm here and I'm taking revenge, or I'm teaming up with Abraxas to take revenge. Like, I think there's a lot of room for different interpretations there. And I choose to think that Minnie is like, you little bitch ass bitch. Like, how dare you? And I'm coming back and I have
I'm
something
coming
to
back
say
and
to
I'm
you.
gonna fuck you up.
Yeah, and I'm fucking messing with your little brain, you little bitch ass bitch, because like, how dare you?
When this movie ended, the first thing I did is I turned to Taylor and I go, would you bargain my soul with the devil for late night talk show host fame? And he goes, I don't think it'd want you. I think it's hoping you stay as long, you stay alive as long
Too
as
dangerous of a
humanly
team up.
possible.
Yeah.
That's
so I don't have to
so
have you here
funny.
yet. The devil
That's
is
so funny.
the devil will rue the day that I show up on his door.
That's
Mhm.
true.
That is
That's
true.
Because
that's
I
scam.
am
I think he would want
annoying.
your soul because you would be such a powerful collaboration, but also he might be scared because obviously he would want to be the one in charge, and
I'm
that's
never
not
gonna
always the
let
way it
that
goes with
happen.
Sydney.
I like the idea of her soul being sold to the devil makes her like a mini, like a minor devil or demon kind of thing, because I don't like it being like a haunting thing, because she obviously is more powerful than a ghost because she fucking obliterated Christou inside and out, made him
Yes.
gook out goo. Yeah.
Who would have
So
thought that goo would be such a through line for
Oh my
So
god, it's
much
constant lately.
goo.
It's goo, spooky goo spring over here.
right?
Spooky goo spring. I don't know if
There
there's
is
goo in our
a
next
theme.
movie. I don't remember there being necessarily goo, but it's been almost a year since I've seen it, so you never know.
It could be
But yeah,
surprise
I
goo.
like that. I like it being her
Well,
being like, you dumbass fucking bitch.
yeah, and there is that one moment where Lily speaks in her voice. Like Jack says also at one point where he's like, that was Minnie's voice at the end. And I don't think I'm talking about whatever moment he was talking about. I don't know what he was talking about. But there's that moment where Lily says, don't I look pretty, Jack? Or something like that. And like that is Minnie's voice. You can tell it's not Lily's voice at the very least. It's something different. And you can tell Jack is kind of weirded out by it and not sure
Yeah.
what to make of it. So like, is Lily speaking through her,
Oh,
or is she slash Mr. Wriggles slash Abraxas
yes.
using her? But she's there. She's present for sure.
Well, no, okay, because that might be the exact same point where she's like, "Oh, thank you, Sammy," and she like knows the makeup girl's name.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, okay, the makeup girl very well could have said, "I'm Sammy," and like another part of the movie, like or another part of the day or whatever. But it seemed weird that she knew her name the way that she said
Yeah.
it, and I think that might have come right after it. So like
And
maybe
I
it
was
was
willing
the
to write that
mini.
off as just like the demon knows something that she shouldn't. But for it to be like Minnie's knowledge and familiarity, I think also makes a lot of sense.
No, I'm fully
Love
on
that
the
they're
mini
just
train
working
now.
together.
I'm on the
Yeah,
mini
that's
train.
my thing. Like they could be like that's their like she's moved on. She's got a new bitch now, and it's the devil.
She got a new man.
And
She's
oh, you want to sell
upgraded.
my soul to the devil? Well, guess what?
Come
I'm
on.
gonna fuck the devil, and then I'm gonna fuck up your TV show. And
I'm
yeah,
gonna
you're
fuck the
gonna be
devil, and
real
then I'm gonna
famous
fuck
soon,
you.
bitch. And it's because you're gonna murder a little girl on TV, and that's how everyone's gonna remember you as a little girl killer. And probably that's what you did in the Grove, sacrificing children for success,
Die.
and so Reagan could be president or whatever. Like,
Wait, like
hello.
also we didn't talk about that enough just for 1 second. Like it's like who are the known members of Bohemian Grove? Ronald Reagan. Like number 1 was Reagan.
Don't
And I
forget
was
the
like, wow.
Bushes, 1 and 2.
Oh, both of them.
They love a secret society. They were also in what was
Here's
it,
the thing.
Skull and Bones at Yale and stuff
Yeah,
too. So
literally every man that has like an ounce of like political power or anything like that is a member.
yeah, I mean,
Is a
they
what?
specifically
member.
did not.
Oh, I thought you said
They specifically didn't
something
say
else.
Bohemian Grove in the movie, but I think those are like real historical images. Like I don't think they
Yeah.
were like recreating things. I think they like bought images to use.
From Alex
Yeah.
Jones.
Another problematic part of this. There have been other people who've infiltrated it. And honestly, though, okay, like my conspiracy vibes were tingling. I was feeling the vibration because
With
I
her
read this like
tings. Her
my
tings.
tings are tingling.
The tings are
Because
tingling.
I read this fucking WAPO article about it and it said like nothing. And I was like, this is big. This is big Bohemian Grove.
Even in the
Taking
SEO
hold of the
explainer,
narrative.
they can't say shit. Okay, there's evil
This is
afoot.
big. Bohemian
They're
Grove
like,
doesn't want you to
"Oh."
know.
Influence is being exerted.
They're like, oh, it's mysterious, but that's about it. I'm like,
Who owns WAPO?
what
Is
about the
that
killings?
Jeff Bezos?
Another thing that I said was like, another thing I saw was some guy in the 80s or something. He also infiltrated it and like reported on it, but like definitely from a much less like I'm infiltrating perspective and a more like I'm a guest here, but I'm gonna write an
Yeah.
article afterwards. And he was like,
Wikipedia
here's
says
the
Rick Cloher.
quintessential vibe that you feel at Bohemian Grove. I was
Oh.
listening to some cool jazz music, some beautiful piano music was being played, and I turned the corner and there was a dude and he was holding a beer and he was pissing wherever he wanted. And he was like, that's Bohemian Grove. The men can piss wherever they want, except not on these certain trees that are near the dining circle. And I was like, I'm not reading the rest of this article.
Yeah, I mean, for all the conspiracy stuff, I'm willing to believe that it is just a bunch of very rich and powerful fraternity brothers in robes doing weird fraternity rituals and sacrificing things for sure, whether or not they really believe that there is a
They're just
real supernatural.
sacrificing
They're just
their
boys at
own
summer camp
morals.
having fun and they don't give a shit about anybody else. So yeah, they're gonna sacrifice
They said,
some
actually, we
whatevers.
miss
Like,
our old frat days where we could have
I don't know if
butt
this is
sex
really working,
and
but
just
it's fun.
chill. And that's what they do
Here's
on the
the thing.
weekend.
Carmichael said they have orgies.
Yeah.
Carmichael
Oh, yeah.
mentioned the orgies.
I mean, here's
And he
the
was like,
thing,
"Hey,
though.
babe."
Here's the thing. You see what dudes, not all dudes, but some historical frat dudes have done just being in a frat. They've fucking
Yeah.
killed people. I heard about
Yeah.
the John Hamm thing this week and I'm really fucking freaked out. I don't want to talk about it. You look it up
John
on your
Hamm
own.
lore
Look
goes
up
so
John
hard.
Hamm thing, sad slanty face, and you'll find out. And like that's just what people do at a normal frat house. Imagine with the mystery of the woods outside of San
The real rich and
Francisco,
powerful.
the
And,
red
like, just
woods.
so much money, and it's your own money, not
Mhm.
mommy and daddy's money.
It could get crazy out there. It could get crazy. Any more thoughts about the ending before we move into our I gave it to you.
Segundos. Sorry, it's late night. I had to yawn.
It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I like the break of the aspect ratio. I like that they like stepped away from the premise. I think they built an out for that for themselves earlier on when they were like, you can't necessarily trust what you're seeing because you've been hypnotized. And so like this is vulnerable to influence and it is vulnerable to manipulation. Yeah. And also like maybe there is real supernatural something's going on. So I think that I like the aspect ratio breaking. That's my favorite part. And I like the way that they come back to it at the end. And I think if they had just really stuck strictly to the found footage thing, I would have been like, okay, it was interesting, but I don't care. I care explicitly because I think that like elevated what they were doing here.
I think I would have still liked it if they had stuck with it, but I like that they wanted to literally blow our minds by literally blowing out the proportions of what we've been seeing. It was like, push those barriers aside, babe. There's crazy shit going down. And I thought it was fun and very dramatic. And so we love a little flair, especially right at the end. Okay.
It is funny.
Time.
They did tease.
sorry.
Wait, there. One more thing, just from the Q&A that I thought was interesting, is they like touched a little on something that I think gets lost for the most part in the movie, which is the way that the woman, the singer Cleo, who's supposed to come out at the end, just like gets fully shoved aside.
So
that was a reference to a real singer, Cleo James, I think was her name. Where Cleo Lane, Joan James is the actress, I think, but she's Britain's first lady of jazz, and they said they're her biggest fans. And they just like they wanted to include her, and it was like a funny gag, also, I think, which is fun, is that it just like they keep being like, and Cleo's coming out next, and we got to get to Cleo, and then it's like, well,
he's like, I'm not cutting Cleo again earlier in one of the behind the scenes things. So obviously they've cut her before.
But here's the thing, good for Cleo, because she probably lived because she kept getting pushed back.
She fled backstage with everybody else, including maybe Leo ? The producer. That was one
why
thing.
did he get to live? Huh?
I guess we don't know for sure that he did, but I think you said last night you really wanted to see him die, and I think that is a little bit of a
Danny
shame.
said he really wanted to see him die. Yeah, but I also would have liked to have seen him die. But alas.
I think he's enough of a squirmy, wormy guy that it's very possible that Leo managed to escape with his life in body intact, because
I mean, Monica
he's
is
just a little rat man.
Leo
so.
is here with us today,
He's here with us
right
today.
now.
Yeah.
So
Leo here in the
clearly
room with
he
us
has
tonight.
survived.
Yes,
Monica's
I had
been
to live
possessed
on
with
to
the
wear
soul
a
of
sexy
Leo.
suit on the pod. Okay, now it's time for segment.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Gare, how could it be?
He sacrificed his wife to have all male orgies. So that's
Yeah.
gay.
Whoa, yeah, it's already gay.
That's at least bisexual. That sounds like a chaos
That's one of the
bisexual
first
to
notes I
me.
wrote down when I got out of the movie. I was like, Jack sacrificed his wife to have all male orgies with the Grove. So that's gay.
Okay.
There you go. I mean, done. Nail.
Carmichael saying they have
Nailed in
orgies.
one.
I want that invite.
Carmichael's gay.
That's specifically what he's looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, Carmichael for
Carmichael
sure gay.
has like cunty facial hair. Like, of course he's gay. Look at him.
Look at
Mhm.
his. See, he brought so many blazers. Gay.
You can't tell me that sassy man is not a raging homosexual.
I think Gus is bisexual as well.
Love that for Gus.
They talked a lot about the very natural chemistry between those two actors who played Jack and Gus, and like the most room for improv in the movie was like in their little
Banter.
dialogues and back and forth, and in like the monologue and stuff that he delivers in the beginning. So I think that really shines. And I think Gus has some feelings for. He has a wife that he loves very much. I believe that, but I also think he has a little bit of a crush on Jack, and that's part of how we get to where we are.
Yeah, that's why he keeps on sacrificing his own safety to keep this show going. Like all these things going on, giving it all up to these antics that he doesn't believe in. Because that's
And
his
they're like
boyfriend.
flirting is a little bit of part of the chemistry of the late night formula. Is like they play these little jokes on each other, and like, oh, I pop up behind you and I'm wearing a little ghost sheet, and like, oh, I scared you, didn't I guess? And like, oh, the number one most important person here, and Gus is like, thanks, Jack. And Jack is like, the audience. Like, I think that
Yeah.
is a little bit part of the formula, is that Gus has a crush on him, and it's also real.
Fair. Very fair. I believe that.
Leo also for sure is going to sex parties with people of all genders.
Oh, he's having raging orgies as well.
He's
Just not
they're
sacrificial
not at
orgies.
the Grove. He's not a member of the Grove, I don't think, but he is fucking and sucking at parties. It's the 70s in New York. He's going to sex
It's
parties.
the 70s.
That is.
You
the
saw
best.
him, didn't you? Yeah.
Oh, it's that sweet spot too, just before everything went to shit, where everybody was like super gay
Just
in the
having
late
fun.
70s. Disco, baby. It was a thing. Like people like didn't identify and they just fucked whoever all the time. That's not all the people, but in the clubs that was happening and it was beautiful. And then bad things occurred in the 80s. And everything got
Yeah.
scary and bad.
Yeah.
and
Everything got
Reaganomics.
really scary.
Yeah, many
I also
different
think-
reasons why.
Yeah. Minnie having whatever kind of collaboration with whatever kind of devil, that's gay.
Yep.
She came into her queer identity after her husband
As a
sacrificed her.
she-devil,
She said,
yeah.
I
said,
tried
"I'm
heterosexuality
Being with a
and I
man
won't
again.
go back. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think she
won't go
probably had gay
back.
thoughts earlier that she was suppressing when she also was on Calcutta and seeing all those glorious naked bodies backstage.
Yeah.
But I think they were just thoughts and a little homoerotic friendship, and then she got sacrificed and said, so what was the point of even trying to be straight? I'm going full gay.
I love that for her. Except for the whole dying thing. That sucks.
Yeah, but now she's free to live and torment him forever,
I
just
love
in a
that.
different plane of existence.
Any more gay thoughts?
So many gay thoughts.
Matthew Lillard. Where would he fit into this movie?
I think that we can buy into the world of the movie a little bit and say Matthew Lillard would have been a child in 1976 and he could have been part of the Halloween parade audience or whatever that they were gonna do. That
Oh yeah, the
got cut for
costume.
time. Also, for all we know, it was Matthew Lillard under that skeleton mask.
Yeah, there was a guy in our theater who was telling everyone that that was him. And we were going back and forth. We are like, is he telling the truth? And then Chelsea was like, they filmed this in Australia. And I was like, so he's lying for sure.
I don't know.
Like,
There's
he's
a lot of
100% lying.
Australians in Los Angeles.
This
So
man was not Australian.
They
Or
had
he-
to bring in authentic American extras to fill out the non-speaking roles. Of course they did. They said,
Of course
this
they did.
man who lives in suburban Los Angeles, surely we need him for production.
Surely we need him. I didn't even have my thumb out for that one. I
You
don't
had
know
the
why.
one thumb exposed, doing a little scratchy
I was just
scratch, I
trying to
guess.
scratch my armpit like any woman would. That was for the YouTube crowd. You other folks will have no idea. Where else would Matthew Lillard be? If he was actually in the movie, I would love him as Chris Dew. Also, something we missed in the last section, Chris Dew gay. But Chris Dew also Matthew Lillard.
Chris Dew has a wife, but that's a lavender marriage.
you can have a wife and still be gay.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying, baby.
I think Matthew Lillard would have been the good stagehand guy backstage that was like in charge of the things that was like running around.
Phil?
Yeah.
I loved
Phil, who's over here trying to undo restraints, and he's running camera interference and blah blah blah. And
Phil
yeah,
does
he's,
it all.
he's a busy guy.
Phil is
Yeah,
the hero.
That man was
of this
very handsome
film.
though, so I'd be so sad to lose him in the movie.
He was
was
so
very
handsome.
handsome.
Oh my
He's
god.
very handsome man. Yeah.
Very handsome.
Shouts out
Shout
to
out to that guy.
Christopher Kirby.
Mhm.
You
the
are a very
actor.
handsome man.
Phil. You're very good looking, Christopher. Hit our
I
line.
think
Anyway.
that Matthew Lillard could have done Leo because we know he can play scummy. So like he could have done that for sure. He could have been one of the gags in the beginning where they're doing like the intro and they're showing like all the different segments and stuff that they've had on before. He could have been like one of the wacky ones when they're like, and he's going really wacky, and now he's having, you know, a veteran and a protester come on to fist fight each other, and he's having this counterculture woman come on to say, fuck you, Jack Delroy. Like, he could have done something silly, goofy in there, or he could have done like one of the more serious segments, like with the bird spider or box spider or whatever it was and stuff like that. Like there would have been a lot of different places where they could just slip him in without him needing to take on one of these larger roles.
Yeah, he's got a lot of options here. And
He could have been in the band. I loved the band.
The band.
Yeah.
The band was great.
Well, it's time to move on to dumb bitch though. So just ruminate on what you would like best.
Well,
the dumb bitch, unfortunately, is Jack.
yeah, no arguments
did
here.
sacrifice his wife to the devil, I guess, for the boys.
Girl,
Even
what
though
do
he's
you
so
mean
likable,
you're in
and
the
I
woods?
love him.
Yeah, I think he just is. That's the thing. He's not a malicious bitch. He's just a dumb bitch because, like, again, maybe they didn't know this about magic in the 70s or whatever, but every piece of media that's ever been about how magic has a cost has always really impressed upon you that the cost is not cheap, bitch. So like, what did you think you were gonna be sacrificing? Like, obviously, if it is going to be something to guarantee your success and your fame, etc., it's going to be something important to you, even if it's not the most important thing to you. But from what I know of playing with fire, it's going to be the most important thing to you.
Yep. Dumbass. That's
Dumb
a dumb bitch.
bitch.
Dumb bitch. That brings us to our knives out of fives. Chelsea, please set the scene.
So this movie is doing pretty well. Again, we couldn't really find the budget earlier, but it's made like, what was it, like 2.8 million so far or at the box office, something like that.
I saw it's made like almost 7 million total.
Yeah. Gross.
Oh,
It's like
maybe
6.
that's the US or opening weekend that I saw.
That was opening weekend. Yeah, I just looked at
Okay.
it on IMDb.
Yeah, so they're
Opening
doing
weekend
pretty
was good.
good. Monica says she thinks the budget was less than $1 million, so those are great margins already. But in terms of other numbers, also It's well received. On IMDb, this movie has 7.5 out of 10, pretty good. But then if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, it has 97% fresh from critics, which is crazy high. And even
it had
from
like
audiences.
100 with like 40 reviews at one point.
Oh,
Yeah.
and then there was
It's
like one
still, like-
stinker that brought it down.
Yeah. But that's crazy. It like for 40 reviews, it was still that
Yeah.
high. It was riding high for a minute there.
Yeah. And even from audiences, it has 82% fresh, which is pretty good, higher than IMDb. So overall, people are vibing with this movie. I mean, I know I'm vibing with this movie.
Yeah. I loved it. I can't wait to watch this movie again. I think that there's some definite question marks that I want to fill in with a second watch just to get closer in there. But I don't think this like broke any of my found footage rules. You know what I mean? This is giving me everything I'm looking for. 70s aesthetic, found footage, hot guy who's the lead. We didn't talk about him nearly enough. I love the main actor in this movie. What is his name?
He was really great.
Yeah, David Datsmalchin. I think that's how you say his last name. He is been in everything as a spooky boy, and I'm glad that he got his shine as the leading man. But he's in everything. He's in Oppenheimer. He is in Dune.
He has perfect spooky boy face too.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't have to audition for this role at all. They wanted him. Like they came to him and offered it to him. And they found him because he wrote an article for Fangoria about like regional horror TV show hosts across the country. And so like that was an interest for him already, and he was able to like bring a lot of that energy to the role because of that knowledge. Obviously, Night Owl is not a horror show, but to have like that grounding influence, I think they liked that for his performance. Yeah, they came to him and he didn't have to audition, and a lot of the cast came together like last minute, but I think he really was like their tentpole piece when they were putting this movie together.
100%. Yeah. He wouldn't be auditioning for this because it, again, super small budget thing. And he has been in, I mean, look at his IMDb. He's been in 4,000 million things. And he was in The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which I really liked. But anyway, back to my knives. I think that this was a total triumph in horror, and everyone's been saying that like, oh, this is one of the standouts of the year. I think it still will be at the end of the year, even though this year is fucking stacked. It's so fucking stacked. But I love an indie effort that's so creative, that does so much with so little money, but so many collaborators. And the one thing for me that takes it down is the AI thing. So I have to dock points for that just because it takes me out of some of the things that are what I love about it the most, which is the like authenticity to the 70s aesthetic that they're going for. So
it's such a soulless thing to put in a movie that's like a love letter to so many aspects of horror and late night and local little regional horror. Yeah, I mean they so clearly love so many elements of that, and that's why they made this movie. And then to put something in that's so like lacking in heart is just a disappointment.
No, it really, really is. So for me, I'm going to give this one probably like a 4.7, which is still a really fucking great score because I really did love this movie, and I think I'm going to love it more the more times I watch it. But gotta dock some points for the AI.
I'm giving this a 3 out of 5. I liked I like this movie. I will watch it again, but like I don't think it lives up to the hype for me. Like this isn't like this movie is beautiful. It's fun to watch. But it was kind of a disappointment for me. Honestly, I thought it would be better.
It definitely seems like you see a lot of unrealized potential for a product that could like really hit the sweet spot for you.
Yeah.
And this doesn't quite get there.
It didn't live up to the hype for me. It like so many people said it was like, and here's the thing, it's beautiful, it's fun, I will watch it again, but like it was like here everybody was like talking it up and it just kind of went
Mm.
Yeah, it doesn't work for every folk. So you gave it 3.5
3.
or 3. Okay. Fair, 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 fair. What about you, Chelsea?
Was it a 3.5? Did you say 3.5? I don't.
What about you,
Um,
Chelsea?
I think for me, like I said, I really, really like the part of the movie where they break the aspect ratio and say, you thought you knew what you were getting into, and we're doing something a little bit different. For me, that's like what set the movie apart. I didn't necessarily like, I had heard that people were really excited about this movie and that it was really original and it was doing its own thing, blah, blah, blah. And that people were really enjoying it. It doesn't seem so tailored to my interests the way that it is like a lot of what you both like in different horror movies. So for that to be a surprise element of it made me like it so much more than I was expecting to. I don't necessarily think that a second viewing is going to radically change anybody's. You can like check for things that you're looking for, you know what I mean? Like that's the benefit of a second viewing experience. I won't say that it is like honeymoon, which we did last week, where like a second experience you're really able to appreciate elements and like themes in it. I think I kind of was I don't think my second viewing radically changed my understanding or appreciation for this movie. So like while I enjoyed it and I would watch it again and I would watch it again in a group, and that like last 20 minutes was like so the takeaway for me, and I liked it so much. It's like I do have to sit through an hour 10, an hour 20 minutes to get there. And it's worth the payoff. But I don't know. I liked it a lot. I'm gonna give it a nice score. I'm gonna give it like a 4.2, I think. But I don't know. I'm intrigued by Sydney's ideas. I liked it what it is. I liked what they did with it a lot. I would love to see what these writer directors could do with more resources in the future. And I'm really curious to see what they come up with next. And they said that they want to at some point do like a collector's edition of this if they're able to, and like really talk about it. And I would be so curious to hear more about the director commentary and like their intentions, instead of them, you know, playing to like what the audience is coming to and presenting to them as like, this is my theory or whatever. That said, yeah, the AI thing is disappointing, especially because there's not like big studio meddling being like, well, you have to just do it this way. So it really is. It's This movie came out before the strikes happened, and like these men are Australian, so they would not have been in the Writers Guild of America anyway. But it is disappointing to see right after so many of those protections were fought for in Hollywood, to have a film that's being so well received be like, oh, and also we have this element of it that is like now such a part of the conversation. Like it's just a bummer.
Totally. Oh, okay. Well, that's Late Night with the Devil, folks. I loved it. I had a great time. But we're moving on to something different. And we're doing actually something very similar to what we did the last time we had a devil movie on the pod. Because the last devil movie we did was The House of the Devil, which was a very, very true to concept 80s remake kind of film. You know what I mean? They're trying to create that 80s aesthetic and nail it. And so this movie was trying to recreate that 70s aesthetic and nail it. Well, now we're going for the real deal, the real McCoy. We're going back. We're doing something that I put on the schedule almost a year ago. Once again, it was a movie that I watched for the first time because of the Raider of the Lost podcast draft. I had two big standouts. One was Possession. The other one was 1973's The Wicker Man. No, it's not the one with Nicolas Cage. I'm sorry. I really want to do that one too, but we have to do this one first.
That's the
We
only
have
one
to.
that I've seen. So I'm excited to see the OG.
This
The
shit is
original.
whack as all hell. It's nuts. It's fucking nuts. It is just It's nuts. I mean, and it's
just a
beautiful.
It is funny
time
that we did
for the
a
spring
80s period
equinox.
piece followed by an 80s
Yeah.
possession
Movie.
movie and then a 70s period piece
We
followed
love a
by a
theme.
It was
70s.
intentional. It was
We are
intentional.
I don't know what Wicker Man is
so
really about. I have heard things.
brilliant.
I've never seen it and I've never researched further. So I'm curious to experience it for myself.
It inspired a lot of things that you have seen. And it is
Yeah, I
like
suspect it's
the
going to be one of those things where you watch and go, "Oh."
It's the OG folk horror movie, and that's my favorite genre of horror movie. So I'm excited. But that wraps it up for this episode. First, we need to do our poll question, though. So I have no ideas. What are our late night at the devil poll questions?
Was Minnie fucking that devil, or was the
Minnie-
devil channeling Minnie's spirit? What was their
Was
collaboration?
Minnie
What was their
in
relationship?
her Reputation era, or
Iconic. Something along those lines that will be parsed out later on. And you can't buy merch anymore, unfortunately, but you can write us a long letter in the form of a 5-star review. You could do that and say, wow, I loved the opportunity to buy merch and thank you so much. And hashtag Spooky Tuesday swag. Just for fun. And you can also follow us on social media. We're at spooky_Tuesday on everything except for Facebook and Tumblr, where we are at Spooky Tuesday Pod. Specifically, most importantly, we're on YouTube, where we have video episodes that are very snazzy every single Tuesday. And that's it. That's all I have, actually. So thank you for listening.
bye, spookies.
Oh, see you next Tuesday. I forgot to say that.
Lily, I understand that you have a name for this thing that lives inside of you.
Mm-hmm. I call him Mr. Wriggles.
And why do you call him that?
He kind of wriggles his way inside my head, and then he wriggles his way out.
Spooky Tuesday was created by Monica Height, Sydney Thompson, and Chelsea Duff, and edited by Sydney Thompson. Our gorgeously spooky tunes are all thanks to Tamra Simons, who you can follow on Instagram at great18_. That's GR818_. And our podcast art is by Ryan Brom, who you can find on Instagram at Ryan Brom Art. That's Ryan, RYAN, Brom, BROMM, Art, ART. Learn more about Spooky Tuesday at spookytuesdaypod.tumblr.com.